Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I want to introduce you to Atomic Habits by James Clear, a groundbreaking book that reveals how tiny changes can lead to remarkable results. Clear explores the science of habit formation and shows us that success is not about making huge leaps, but about making small, consistent improvements every day. By focusing on the power of systems and identity, rather than just goals, he teaches us how to reshape our behavior, break bad habits, and build lasting positive routines. This book is not just about motivation, it's about practical strategies that anyone can apply to transform their life, one atomic habit at a time. Small habits compound over time. In Atomic Habits, James Clear emphasizes the profound power that small habits hold in shaping our lives. The core idea is that tiny changes, when done consistently, create a cumulative effect that far exceeds the initial action. This is often referred to as the compound effect of habits. Just like money invested wisely grows exponentially due to compound interest, small behavioral changes build upon each other to produce significant results over time. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about change is that it requires a massive, immediate transformation. Many believe that in order to improve their lives, they must overhaul their routines, make dramatic shifts, or wait for a sudden burst of motivation. However, Clear challenges this notion by showing that real change happens incrementally, one small habit at a time. Imagine improving by just 1% every day. It might seem insignificant at first. After all, a 1% change is barely noticeable on any single day. But over the course of a year, that tiny daily improvement compounds to a 37-fold increase in overall progress. This simple mathematical truth demonstrates why focusing on small habits is so powerful. It is the steady, consistent effort that eventually leads to mastery and success. The idea of small habits compounding also helps us understand why setbacks or small regressions don't necessarily spell failure. Because habits accumulate gradually, missing a day or making a mistake doesn't erase progress. Instead, it's the long-term trajectory of consistent habits that shapes outcomes. This perspective encourages patience and persistence rather than instant perfection. Clear points out that many people underestimate how impactful small habits are because their effects are often delayed and invisible in the short term. The benefits are not immediate, so it's easy to feel discouraged and give up early. But just as a seed planted in the soil takes time to grow roots and sprout, habits require time to develop their full impact. The key is to trust the process and stay consistent even when progress feels slow or unnoticeable. This concept also explains why many people struggle with change. They expect immediate results and give up when they don't see them. They might try drastic efforts like intense diets or extreme workout plans, only to burn out quickly. In contrast, Atomic Habits' small, manageable changes are sustainable and much easier to maintain over the long haul. Another important aspect James Clear highlights is the difference between the outcomes of habits and the habits themselves. People tend to focus on the goal, like losing weight, writing a book, or learning a language, without realizing that the outcome is a lagging indicator of the habits they perform consistently. The habits are the system that leads to those results. By focusing on improving tiny habits daily, the positive outcomes naturally follow over time. For example, if someone wants to write a novel, they might set a small habit of writing just 100 words a day. Writing 100 words seems trivial and hardly moves the needle on its own. But when done daily, this habit adds up to tens of thousands of words in a few months, enough for a full manuscript. The habit, no matter how small, compounds to create meaningful progress. Similarly, in health and fitness, a habit of walking just 10 minutes every day might seem insignificant compared to a rigorous calm routine. Yet this small habit builds stamina, improves mood, and encourages more movement. Over months and years, it leads to better overall health, far beyond what an occasional intense effort could achieve. James Clear also emphasizes that the compound effect applies not just to positive habits but also to negative ones. Bad habits, even if they seem minor, accumulate and create destructive results over time. Smoking one cigarette a day might appear harmless, but it compounds into serious health risks over years. Overspending on small, unnecessary purchases gradually undermines financial stability. This is why awareness and control of habits, both good and bad, are crucial for long-term well-being. The power of small habits is further reinforced by the idea that habits shape identity. Each tiny action is a vote for the type of person you want to become. When you consistently make small positive choices, you reinforce the identity of someone who is disciplined, healthy, productive, or creative. These repeated votes gradually change your self-image and make it easier to maintain the habits because you start acting in alignment with your new identity. Clear also explains that small habits are less overwhelming and easier to start, which helps overcome common barriers like procrastination and lack of tenacity. Because habits are atomic or very small, the mental resistance is much lower, making it easier to get started. This starting small approach helps build momentum that fuels further action. The concept of small habits compounding is not just theory, it's backed by research in psychology and behavioral science. Studies show that people who focus on small changes are more likely to succeed and maintain those changes over time. For example, tiny improvements in study habits, sleep hygiene, or dietary choices are far more sustainable than radical changes that require huge willpower. Furthermore, James Clear highlights that success is not about making huge, once-in-a-lifetime efforts, but about showing up every day, doing small things right repeatedly. This daily consistency is the real driver behind long-term achievement and personal transformation. In conclusion, the principle that small habits compound over time is foundational to atomic habits. It encourages us to focus on making tiny, positive changes that feel manageable and sustainable. It reminds us to be patient, trust the process, and understand that the path to success is a marathon, not a sprint. By committing to small daily improvements and recognizing the cumulative power of these atomic habits, anyone can achieve remarkable results that transform their life over months and years. This perspective makes habit formation less daunting and more accessible, empowering us to create lasting change one small step at a time. Focus on systems, not goals. James Clear's Atomic Habits challenges the traditional approach that many people take towards success and personal improvement, setting big, specific goals. While goals are important as a direction or vision, Clear emphasizes that focusing solely on goals is often misleading and insufficient for creating lasting change. Instead, he advocates for a shift in mindset from obsessing over goals to prioritizing the systems and processes that produce those results. At its core, a goal is an outcome you want to achieve. For example, you might want to lose 20 pounds, write a novel, or earn a promotion. Goals represent a destination, the endpoint you hope to reach. But Clear argues that the ultimate key to success lies not in fixating on that destination, but in the journey itself, the system of habits, routines, and behaviors you consistently perform. A system is the collection of daily actions, habits, and processes that drive progress. Unlike a goal, a system focuses on the method rather than the result. For instance, if your goal is to write a novel, your system is your daily writing habit or schedule. If your goal is weight loss, your system consists of your meal planning, exercise routines, and sleep habits. If your goal is career advancement, your system involves continual learning, networking, and skill development. Clear's point is simple but powerful. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. This means that no matter how ambitious your goals are, if your daily systems are ineffective or inconsistent, success will be difficult to achieve. Conversely, great systems almost always lead to meaningful progress, even if the goal initially seems far away. One reason systems trump goals is because goals are binary. You either achieve them or you don't. This all or nothing mentality can be discouraging. If you don't hit a goal exactly as planned, it may feel like failure, causing frustration and loss of motivation. On the other hand, systems are continuous. You can always improve your habits, refine your routines, and adjust your processes. Systems offer flexibility and encourage steady progress. Moreover, Clear points out that goals tend to focus on future achievements, which can lead to procrastination or anxiety. People may delay taking action until they feel ready or until the right moment comes. Systems, however, demand present action. They encourage you to build habits today that shape your future outcomes. When you focus on the system, you engage in the process of continuous improvement, which is under your control every day. Another advantage of focusing on systems is that they promote identity change. By consistently performing the habits within your system, you start to reinforce a new self-image. Rather than saying, "I want to lose weight," focusing on the system changes your belief to "I am someone who prioritizes health and exercises regularly." This identity shift is crucial for lasting behavior change, as habits that align with your identity are more sustainable. Clear illustrates this with the example of an Olympic athlete. Their goal might be to win a gold medal, but their success comes from the systems they put in place: their training schedule, nutrition plan, mental preparation, and recovery practices. They don't simply wake up one day and achieve the medal. They commit to daily systems that incrementally improve their performance. This shift in focus from goals to systems also reduces the pressure and perfectionism that often sabotage progress. When you are outcome-focused, the fear of failure can become overwhelming. But when you focus on daily habits, the emphasis is on showing up and making progress, even if imperfect. Systems encourage consistency over perfection. Clear also discusses how goals can create a problem of yo-yo behavior. For example, people may adopt extreme diets to reach a weight loss goal, only to abandon the system after the goal is reached, leading to regression. Systems, by contrast, encourage sustainable habits that become part of your lifestyle, reducing the risk of burnout or relapse. He also emphasizes that systems provide immediate feedback and reward, which helps maintain motivation. Goals are often distant and abstract, making it hard to stay motivated. Systems, being process-oriented, give you small wins and signals of progress every day. For example, finishing a workout or writing a chapter is an accomplishment in itself, regardless of whether the final goal is met yet. A critical point Clear makes is that goals are often out of your control. External factors like market conditions, timing, or competition can influence results. Systems, however, are entirely within your control. You decide what habits to build and how you spend your time. By focusing on systems, you focus on what you can influence, which empowers you and reduces feelings of helplessness. The power of systems can be seen in many domains of life and business. In professional settings, companies with strong operational systems often outperform those focused solely on quarterly targets. In creative fields, artists who cultivate daily practices tend to produce more meaningful work than those who wait for inspiration. In personal development, people who commit to consistent learning habits grow more than those who chase occasional bursts of motivation. To put this into practice, James Clear advises designing and optimizing your systems carefully. This means identifying the habits and routines that support your desired outcomes and making them easy, attractive, and satisfying to perform. Instead of saying, "I want to read more books," you create a system by setting a habit to read one page every night before bed. Instead of a vague goal like "be healthier," you develop a system that includes daily walks, meal prepping, and regular sleep schedules. In summary, focusing on systems rather than goals is a paradigm shift that helps you build sustainable habits and long-term success. Goals provide direction, but systems drive progress. By investing your energy in creating strong, repeatable habits and processes, you gain control over your actions, reinforce positive identity changes, and achieve lasting improvements. This approach not only makes change more manageable but also more enjoyable, as it celebrates the small wins along the way. James Clear's insight into the importance of systems over goals is one of the most valuable lessons in Atomic Habits and offers a blueprint for anyone looking to create meaningful, lasting change in their life. Make habits obvious. One of the foundational ideas James Clear presents in Atomic Habits is the importance of making habits obvious. This principle is rooted in how our brains recognize and respond to cues in our environment, which trigger habitual behaviors. Clear explains that the first step to building any new habit is to ensure that the cue or signal prompting the habit is visible and unmistakable. If the trigger for the habit is unclear, hidden, or easy to ignore, it becomes far more difficult to initiate the behavior consistently. Habits begin with a cue, which can be anything that prompts your brain to start the routine. It could be a time of day, a location, the presence of certain people, an emotional state, or a preceding action. For example, if you want to build a habit of drinking water regularly, the cue might be seeing your water bottle on your desk. If you want to meditate every morning, the cue could be placing your meditation cushion where you can easily see it. Clear stresses that many people fail to build habits because the cues are not obvious enough. Often, people rely on vague intentions like "I'll exercise more" or "I'll eat healthier," but they don't design clear cues that prompt these actions. Without obvious cues, it's easy to forget or overlook the desired behavior, especially in a busy or distracting environment. One of the practical ways Clear suggests to make habits obvious is by shaping your environment to highlight the cues for the behaviors you want. This process is called environment design. Instead of relying solely on willpower or motivation, which can fluctuate, you strategically place reminders and triggers in your surroundings that nudge you toward your habit. For instance, if your goal is to read more books, Rather than leaving your books buried in a closet or on a high shelf, you place the book on your nightstand or kitchen table where you will see it regularly. This visual cue acts as a gentle prompt, reminding you to pick up the book and read a few pages. Similarly, if you want to eat healthier snacks, you can keep fruits and nuts visible on the kitchen counter and remove junk food from sight. Clear also discusses the power of habit stacking as a method to make habits obvious. Habit stacking involves linking a new habit to an existing one by using the existing habit as a clear cue. Since the old habit already has a stable place in your routine, it serves as a reliable trigger for the new behavior. For example, if you already brush your teeth every morning, you might stack a new habit by saying, "After I brush my teeth, I will meditate for 2 minutes." The action of brushing teeth becomes the obvious cue that reminds you to meditate. Another technique to make habits obvious is to write down your intended habits in a clear and specific way. Instead of vague resolutions like exercise more, you define a precise habit with a clear cue and context, such as "I will do 10 push-ups immediately after I pour my morning coffee." This clarity removes ambiguity and increases the likelihood of following through. James Clear also points out that obvious cues help reduce decision fatigue. When a habit's trigger is clear and present, you don't have to waste mental energy figuring out when or how to act. Your brain recognizes the cue automatically and initiates the habit almost reflexively. This makes the behavior easier and more consistent. The importance of obvious cues extends beyond just new habits. It's also critical for breaking bad habits. To reduce undesirable behaviors, Clear advises making their cues invisible or less obvious. For example, if you want to cut down on screen time, you might leave your phone in another room or turn off notifications. By removing the obvious triggers, you make it harder to fall into the unwanted habit. Clear's concept of making habits obvious aligns with psychological research on the role of environmental triggers in habit formation. Studies show that people are highly influenced by their surroundings, and by changing the environment, one can alter behavior patterns significantly. It also ties into the idea of choice architecture, where the environment is designed to make good choices easier and bad choices harder. In practical terms, this principle encourages individuals to take control of their environment proactively. Instead of expecting motivation to strike or relying on willpower, you set yourself up for success by ensuring the cues for your desired habits are clearly visible and unavoidable. Clear provides many real-world examples of this strategy. For example, a person wanting to drink more water might place several filled water bottles around their house. Someone aiming to floss regularly might leave dental floss next to their toothbrush instead of hiding it in a cabinet. A writer wanting to develop a daily writing habit might keep their laptop open and on their desk, ready to use. The idea of making habits obvious also applies to time cues. Setting specific times for a habit creates a predictable environment that signals when to act. For example, deciding "I will exercise at 7 a.m. every day" makes the time itself an obvious cue. This temporal cue helps anchor the habit in your routine. Moreover, Clear highlights the benefit of using visual reminders such as notes, alarms, or habit trackers. Habit trackers, for instance, make progress visible and remind you to maintain the streak, reinforcing the cue to continue the habit. Seeing a streak grow day by day can become a powerful, obvious motivator to keep going. Importantly, making habits obvious is about reducing friction. The easier it is to notice the cue and start the habit, the more likely you are to do it. This concept encourages simplifying the process so that the habit initiation doesn't require extra effort or thought. By contrast, if the cues are hidden, confusing, or require deliberate effort to recall, the habit is more prone to failure. Our brains tend to prioritize habits that require less cognitive load, so obvious and accessible cues have a huge advantage. In summary, making habits obvious is about designing your environment and routines so that the signals triggering your habits are clear, visible, and unambiguous. It's about removing guesswork and relying on automatic responses triggered by your surroundings. This principle leverages the natural way human brains work, turning habits into effortless, almost automatic behaviors. James Clear's insight into the power of obvious cues provides a practical, scientifically grounded approach to habit formation that anyone can implement to build new habits successfully or eliminate bad ones. By mastering this strategy, you pave the way for consistent behavior change and long-term success. Make habits attractive. One of the key principles James Clear discusses in Atomic Habits is the importance of making habits attractive. This concept revolves around the idea that for a habit to stick, it must appeal to us on a psychological level. People are naturally drawn to actions and behaviors that bring pleasure, satisfaction, or some form of reward. If a habit feels dull, boring, or unpleasant, it's much harder to maintain consistently. Therefore, increasing the attractiveness of a habit is a powerful way to boost motivation and ensure that it becomes a lasting part of your routine. The attractiveness of a habit is deeply linked to how our brain processes rewards and motivation. Neuroscience shows that the brain's dopamine system plays a central role in this. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that signals anticipation of reward and motivates behavior. When you find a habit attractive, your brain releases dopamine in anticipation, making you more likely to engage in that behavior. Conversely, if the habit feels like a chore or punishment, your brain avoids it, making it much harder to form. James Clear points out that habits are essentially a feedback loop that involves a cue, craving, response, and reward. The craving stage is crucial because it creates the desire or motivation to act. To make a habit attractive, you need to cultivate positive cravings that encourage you to perform the behavior. This means designing your habits in a way that they trigger pleasurable feelings or align with your intrinsic desires. Moreover, motivation waxes and wanes naturally, so relying solely on motivation to maintain habits can be unreliable. By making habits attractive, you leverage your brain's natural reward system to create consistent cravings that drive the behavior. This reduces dependence on fluctuating motivation levels and increases the chance of long-term adherence. Clear also warns against the danger of making habits too difficult or unpleasant, as this leads to resistance and eventual failure. Instead, focusing on ways to enhance the immediate appeal of the habit ensures that you're more likely to start and continue the behavior. For example, if healthy eating feels restrictive, finding delicious, nutritious recipes can make the habit more attractive. He also notes that while the ultimate rewards of habits, like improved health or success, may be delayed, the immediate experience of the habit needs to be attractive to sustain effort. People are wired to seek instant gratification, so creating small, immediate pleasures within the habit can keep you engaged until the long-term benefits accumulate. An important takeaway from this principle is that attraction doesn't mean temptation to bad habits, but rather enhancing the appeal of positive habits. You want to create positive cravings that pull you toward beneficial behaviors rather than harmful ones. James Clear illustrates this principle with many real-life examples. For instance, some companies make their products addictive by leveraging the brain's craving system. Similarly, you can harness this by designing your habits to be inherently rewarding or by bundling them with enjoyable activities. This approach transforms the process of habit formation from a painful chore into a satisfying experience. In conclusion, making habits attractive is a crucial step in building lasting behavior change. By understanding how cravings and rewards work, and by creatively enhancing the appeal of your desired habits through strategies like temptation bundling, social reinforcement, cognitive reframing, and environment design, you can increase your motivation and make the habit easier to sustain. This principle helps shift habits from something you have to do into something you want to do, paving the way for consistent progress and meaningful transformation. Make habits easy. One of the most important principles James Clear discusses in Atomic Habits is the idea of making habits easy. This concept recognizes a fundamental truth about human behavior. People naturally gravitate toward actions that require less effort. The easier a habit is to do, the more likely it is to become automatic and stick over time. Conversely, habits that seem difficult, time-consuming, or complex often face resistance and are abandoned quickly. Therefore, reducing friction and simplifying habits is key to creating lasting behavioral change. Clear explains that the human brain is wired to conserve energy and avoid unnecessary effort. This is part of our evolutionary survival mechanism, where conserving mental and physical resources was crucial. As a result, when faced with choices, people tend to select the path of least resistance. Applying this to habits means that if a habit is complicated or inconvenient, it's far less likely to be performed consistently. One of the first ways to make habits easy is to scale them down to their most atomic form, hence the name Atomic Habits. This means breaking down big goals or complex routines into small, manageable actions that feel effortless. For example, instead of committing to running 5 miles every day, you might start by putting on your running shoes and stepping outside for just 1 minute. This tiny version of the habit reduces the initial barrier and builds momentum. Clear emphasizes that starting small is not about being lazy, but about creating a sustainable foundation. By making the first step easy, you remove excuses and increase the chance that you will follow through. Once the habit is started, momentum often carries you forward naturally. This approach taps into the power of showing up rather than trying to do too much too soon. Another critical aspect of making habits easy is designing your environment to minimize friction. Friction refers to any obstacle or effort required to perform the habit. Clear encourages people to remove unnecessary steps or barriers that stand between them and their desired behavior. For example, if you want to practice guitar daily, leaving your guitar out of its case and within reach reduces the effort needed to start playing. If you want to eat healthier, having nutritious snacks prepped and accessible makes it easier to choose them over junk food. Automation also plays a significant role in simplifying habits. Clear advocates for automating as many decisions as possible related to your habits so that the brain doesn't have to expend energy deciding what or when to act. This can involve setting recurring calendar reminders, meal prepping for the week, or using apps and tools to streamline actions. By reducing decision fatigue, you conserve willpower and make the habit more effortless. In addition, Clear points out that complexity breeds procrastination. If a habit requires many steps, preparation, or complicated instructions, you're more likely to delay or avoid it. Simplifying habits into clear, straightforward actions reduces this risk. For example, rather than planning an elaborate meal to eat healthier, start with one simple swap like adding a salad to your dinner. Clear also encourages people to use technology and tools to make habits easier. For instance, using a fitness tracker that automatically logs your steps reduces the effort needed to monitor your activity. Using meal delivery services for healthy food removes the barrier of cooking. These external aids reduce friction and help maintain the habit. Clear also highlights the importance of the 2-minute rule, a strategy to make habits easy by limiting the time commitment to just 2 minutes initially. The rule states when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. This means focusing on the beginning of the behavior rather than the full goal. For example, if you want to read more books, start by reading 1 page or even just opening the book. If you want to meditate, begin with 2 minutes of mindfulness. The idea is to make the habit so easy that it's almost impossible to say no. This 2-minute approach helps build identity because it allows you to successfully perform the habit immediately, reinforcing the belief that I am the type of person who, by repeating the habit in this simplified form, you create a pattern of success that encourages expansion over time. Eventually, you can increase the duration or intensity naturally, but the key is to start easy. The environment you create can also signal how easy or hard a habit feels. Clear explains that cluttered, chaotic spaces increase resistance to starting new habits. Organizing your space, having dedicated areas for certain behaviors, and removing distractions make habits easier to perform. For example, a clean desk with all writing materials ready encourages you to write more often. Moreover, making habits easy ties into the idea of reducing activation energy, the minimum effort needed to start an action. The lower the activation energy, the more likely the habit will occur. By simplifying tasks, you lower this energy and increase the chance of success. James Clear illustrates these concepts with real-world examples. For instance, a friend who wanted to write every day started by writing just 1 sentence each morning. Because it was so easy, the habit stuck and eventually the writing sessions grew longer naturally. Another example is a person who wanted to exercise more but hated the gym. They started with simple home stretches that took 2 minutes, making it easy to maintain the routine. In conclusion, making habits easy is about reducing barriers, scaling down actions to manageable sizes, and designing your environment to support effortless behavior. By doing so, you align your habits with the brain's natural preference for ease and efficiency. This principle makes habit formation less daunting and more achievable, helping you build lasting change through small, consistent actions that require minimal effort. James Clear's insight into simplifying habits provides a practical and effective roadmap for anyone looking to improve their life without overwhelming themselves. Make habits satisfying. One of the key insights James Clear offers in Atomic Habits is the critical role of making habits satisfying. While many people understand that cues and rewards drive habits, Clear emphasizes that for a habit to truly stick, the experience of performing it needs to be immediately satisfying. This principle hinges on the brain's reward system and how it processes positive feedback to reinforce behaviors, encouraging their repetition. Habits are formed through a feedback loop consisting of cue, craving, response, and reward. The reward is the final step that determines whether the behavior will be repeated. If the reward feels pleasurable and fulfilling, The brain remembers the habit as worthwhile and increases the likelihood that you will perform it again. If the reward is absent or delayed, the habit is less likely to take root. Clear highlights that one of the reasons habits fail is because the benefits are often delayed or abstract, while the effort or discomfort is immediate. For example, exercising regularly brings long-term health benefits, but the immediate experience can be tiring or unpleasant. Similarly, saving money leads to future financial security, but the immediate reward is the pain of spending less. Because humans are wired to seek instant gratification, the absence of immediate satisfaction can make it hard to maintain positive habits. To overcome this, Clear suggests intentionally making habits satisfying in the short term. This means introducing some form of immediate reward or positive feedback that makes the habit feel good to complete. By doing so, you tap into your brain's natural learning mechanisms and increase the likelihood that the behavior becomes automatic. One practical strategy is to track your habits visually. Using a habit tracker or checklist creates a satisfying experience because it provides immediate feedback and a sense of accomplishment. Each time you check off a day or mark progress, you get a small dopamine boost, reinforcing the behavior. Seeing a streak grow can be motivating and makes the habit feel rewarding in itself. Clear also encourages celebrating small wins. Even a simple mental acknowledgement of "I did it," or rewarding yourself with a small treat after completing a habit can enhance its satisfaction. This positive reinforcement strengthens the habit loop, making it more enjoyable to perform regularly. Another way to make habits satisfying is by designing them to feel pleasurable or enjoyable. For example, if you want to build a reading habit, choosing books you love makes the experience fun. If you want to exercise, picking activities you enjoy, like dancing or hiking, turns the habit into a source of joy rather than a chore. The more positive feelings you associate with the habit, the more satisfying it becomes. Clear also points out the power of immediate rewards over delayed ones. While long-term goals are important, relying on future payoffs alone makes it harder to stay consistent. Incorporating small, instant rewards into your habits creates positive reinforcement that drives repetition. For instance, allowing yourself a favorite podcast only while exercising makes the workout more satisfying in the moment. On the flip side, Clear discusses how immediate discomfort or punishment makes habits less likely to stick. Habits that are unpleasant or unrewarding are quickly abandoned. Therefore, reducing negative feelings associated with habits is also part of making them satisfying. This can be done by starting small, so the habit isn't overwhelming, or by pairing the habit with something enjoyable. The concept of reward substitution is also important. This means replacing an immediate negative sensation with a positive one to increase satisfaction. For example, if flossing your teeth feels annoying, listening to music while you do it makes the habit more pleasant. This increases the chance you'll keep up the behavior. Clear highlights that the brain is wired to remember what feels good right now, so habits that provide immediate positive feedback become deeply ingrained. This biological wiring means that making habits satisfying taps directly into how our brains learn and adapt, using pleasure as a key motivator. Moreover, making habits satisfying is not just about external rewards, but also about internal feelings of progress and mastery. When you notice yourself improving, even slightly, it triggers a sense of competence that is intrinsically rewarding. For example, tracking your running pace or the number of pages read can provide internal satisfaction and motivate you to continue. Clear also addresses the importance of avoiding all-or-nothing thinking in habit formation. Sometimes people fail to maintain habits because they expect perfect results or immediate transformation. By making habits satisfying in small ways, you create a positive experience even with incremental progress, reducing the pressure to be perfect and encouraging persistence. Social rewards also enhance satisfaction. Sharing your progress with supportive friends or communities can create a sense of belonging and recognition, which feels rewarding. Positive feedback from others reinforces your identity as someone who practices the habit and increases motivation. James Clear emphasizes that the goal is to create a cycle where performing the habit is immediately rewarding, which in turn encourages you to repeat it. This cycle strengthens over time, leading to the habit becoming automatic and part of your identity. He also notes that habits that feel good are more resilient to setbacks. When the habit itself is satisfying, you're more likely to bounce back after a missed day or failure because you genuinely want to continue the behavior. In conclusion, making habits satisfying is a crucial element in the habit formation process. By ensuring that the experience of performing the habit delivers immediate pleasure, positive feedback, or sense of accomplishment, you reinforce the behavior and increase the chances it will stick. Whether through habit tracking, pairing habits with enjoyable activities, celebrating small wins, or using social reinforcement, creating satisfaction within your habits taps into fundamental brain mechanisms that drive learning and motivation. James Clear's focus on this principle offers a practical roadmap for turning positive behaviors into lasting, enjoyable routines that support meaningful change over time. Identity-based habits. One of the most transformative concepts James Clear introduces in Atomic Habits is the idea of identity-based habits. This principle shifts the focus of habit formation from simply achieving external goals to fundamentally changing who you are, your sense of identity. Clear argues that the deepest and most lasting changes come not from what you want to achieve, but from who you believe you are or want to become. Most people approach habits with an outcome-based mindset. I want to lose 20 pounds, I want to write a book, or I want to run a marathon. These are goals focused on external results. While goals provide direction, Clear points out that goals alone are insufficient for sustained change because they don't address the underlying identity that drives behavior. Identity-based habits, on the other hand, start with the question, who do I want to become? This means focusing on building habits that reinforce a particular identity. For example, instead of saying I want to run a marathon, you might say I am a runner. Instead of I want to write a book, you say I am a writer. This subtle but powerful shift aligns your habits with your self-image, creating a more profound motivation to act consistently. Clear explains that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to be. When you perform a habit, you cast a vote for your identity. Over time, these votes accumulate and your behavior starts to shape your beliefs about yourself. This means that habits don't just change your life externally, they change how you see yourself internally. This identity-based approach works because your brain naturally seeks consistency between your actions and your self-image. If you see yourself as a healthy person, you are more likely to eat well and exercise. If you see yourself as someone who is disorganized, you may struggle to build habits of planning and productivity. By consciously shaping your identity through habits, you create internal alignment that supports lasting change. Clear outlines a three-layer model of behavior change: outcomes, processes, and identity. Most people focus on outcomes, the results they want, or processes, the habits and routines they perform. However, the deepest layer is identity, the beliefs, values, and self-image that drive your behavior. By working from the inside out, changing your identity first, habits become natural expressions of who you are, making them more resilient. One practical way to implement identity-based habits is to start with small, consistent actions that reinforce the desired identity. For example, if you want to become a writer, start by writing one sentence each day. Each time you write, you reinforce the identity of being a writer. This approach reduces the pressure of large goals and focuses on manageable steps that build confidence and identity simultaneously. Clear also stresses the importance of repetition and identity formation. Identity is not formed overnight. It is the product of many small behaviors repeated consistently over time. By repeatedly acting in ways that align with your desired identity, you strengthen the belief that this is who I am. This gradual process makes habits stick because they become expressions of your core self rather than external tasks. Another key aspect is the power of language and self-talk in shaping identity. How you describe yourself matters. Using affirmations like I am someone who, or I'm the kind of person who, creates mental associations that influence behavior. These statements act as internal cues that guide your actions and decisions. Clear highlights that identity-based habits also protect against failure and setbacks. When your habits are tied to who you are, missing a single day or facing obstacles doesn't feel like a total failure. Instead, it's a temporary setback that doesn't threaten your core identity. This mindset encourages resilience and persistence. The concept of identity-based habits also explains why motivation can sometimes fail. Motivation is often linked to outcomes, which can fluctuate and be external. But when your habits are tied to your identity, the motivation to act comes from internal consistency. You don't have to rely on willpower or external rewards because your behavior aligns with your self-concept. Clear provides examples from real life and history to illustrate the power of identity-based habits. For instance, people who quit smoking often shift their identity to I'm not a smoker rather than just I want to quit smoking. This identity change creates a stronger, more intrinsic motivation to avoid cigarettes. He also discusses how habits reinforce identity in a feedback loop. The identity influences behavior, and behavior reinforces identity. This loop can work positively or negatively. For example, identifying as a healthy person leads to healthy behaviors, which strengthen the identity. Conversely, identifying with bad habits can perpetuate destructive behaviors. The key is to intentionally choose and cultivate positive identities through habits. Implementing identity-based habits involves focusing less on the result and more on the type of person you want to be. This mindset encourages you to ask yourself, what would a person like me do, whenever you face choices? By aligning your daily actions with your desired identity, you create habits that are more meaningful and motivating. Clear also suggests using identity affirmations and habit reflection to reinforce the identity. After completing a habit, take a moment to acknowledge, I just acted like the person I want to be. This simple practice strengthens the connection between your actions and identity. Another practical tip is to surround yourself with cues and social environments that support your desired identity. Being around people who embody the identity you aspire to helps reinforce your own self-image and encourages consistent habits. In conclusion, identity-based habits represent a paradigm shift in how we think about behavior change. Rather than focusing solely on external goals or processes, James Clear encourages building habits that reflect and reinforce the person you want to become. By casting votes for your identity through small, consistent actions, shaping your self-talk, and leveraging social support, you create a powerful foundation for lasting transformation. This approach not only changes what you do, but fundamentally changes who you are, leading to deeper, more sustainable habits and meaningful growth over time. Habit stacking. One of the practical and highly effective strategies James Clear presents in Atomic Habits is the concept of habit stacking. Habit stacking is a technique that involves linking a new habit to an existing one by using the existing habit as a trigger or cue for the new behavior. This method leverages the stability and automaticity of current habits to build new routines more easily and consistently. At its core, habit stacking is about creating a sequence or chain of habits where one action naturally leads to the next. Instead of relying solely on memory or motivation to perform a new habit, you anchor the new behavior to a habit that already occurs reliably in your daily life. This connection between habits increases the likelihood that the new behavior will become automatic, reducing the cognitive load involved in starting something new. James Clear explains that our brains are wired to look for patterns and associations. When two behaviors become linked, performing one triggers a desire or cue to perform the other. Habit stacking capitalizes on this neurological tendency by intentionally creating these associations, which serve as reminders and motivators. One of the simplest forms of habit stacking is to use an existing habit's completion as the signal to start the new habit. For example, if you already have a habit of making your morning coffee, you might stack a new habit by deciding to read one page of a book immediately after pouring your coffee. The act of pouring coffee becomes the obvious cue for the reading habit, making it easier to remember and perform. Clear provides a formula to create effective habit stacks after current habit, I will, new habit. This simple sentence clearly links the new behavior to a specific, existing action, making the new habit easier to implement. For instance, after I brush my teeth, I will floss one tooth. Or after I sit down at my desk, I will write one sentence. The power of habit stacking lies in its ability to reduce the friction of habit formation. Instead of waiting for motivation or relying on vague intentions, the new habit is triggered by something you already do regularly. This built-in cue removes guesswork and helps the new habit become part of your routine more naturally. Another benefit is that habit stacking taps into the brain's preference for consistency and routine. Once a habit becomes automatic, it requires little conscious effort. By piggybacking a new habit onto an established one, you tap into the momentum of your existing habits, making it more likely the new behavior will stick. Habit stacking also helps overcome one of the biggest challenges in habit formation: forgetfulness or lack of clear cues. Many new habits fail simply because people forget to do them or don't have a reliable reminder. Anchoring the new habit to a current habit creates a built-in prompt, increasing the chances of follow-through. Clear points out that habit stacking works best when the existing habit is firmly established and happens frequently. The more stable the base habit, the stronger the cue for the new habit. For example, brushing your teeth, having a morning coffee, or locking the door are daily actions that provide excellent anchors for stacking. In addition, habit stacking can be used to build complex routines by linking multiple habits in a sequence. For example, you might create a morning routine stack. After I get out of bed, I will drink a glass of water. After I drink water, I will meditate for 2 minutes. After meditation, I will write down 3 things I'm grateful for. This chain creates a powerful ritual that reinforces positive habits throughout the day. Clear also emphasizes the importance of making each habit in the stack simple and easy to do. Starting with small actions ensures that the routine doesn't become overwhelming, which helps sustain motivation and consistency. Over time, these small habits can grow and evolve into more significant behaviors. Another critical point is that habit stacking builds on the identity-based habit principle. When you stack habits that align with the type of person you want to become, you reinforce your identity continuously. For example, stacking habits related to health, productivity, or creativity helps embed the identity of a healthy, efficient, or creative person. Clear suggests that habit stacking can be customized and flexible. You can experiment with different anchors and habits to find what works best for your lifestyle. The key is to choose clear, specific cues and behaviors that naturally flow from one to the next. Moreover, habit stacking can be combined with other habit-forming strategies, such as the 2-minute rule or making habits attractive and easy. For instance, you might stack a 2-minute habit onto an existing routine or pair a new habit with something you enjoy, increasing its appeal. The technique is also highly adaptable across different contexts. Whether you want to build habits related to fitness, learning, mindfulness, or work productivity, habit stacking provides a versatile framework. For example, after finishing a meal, you might decide to wash your dishes immediately, or after sitting down at your desk, you might open your planner. Research supports the effectiveness of habit stacking by showing that habits formed in consistent contexts are more likely to become automatic. The context or environment acts as a cue, and by linking new habits to existing cues, you enhance the consistency of behavior. James Clear illustrates habit stacking with numerous examples, such as a person who wants to start journaling but struggles to remember. By stacking journaling onto their existing habit of making morning coffee, the person uses the coffee-making routine as a trigger to write a few sentences. Over time, this small behavior becomes ingrained and leads to a meaningful journaling habit. He also notes that habit stacking is particularly useful when starting new habits because the initial hurdle of remembering and initiating action is one of the biggest obstacles. By anchoring to a familiar behavior, you bypass this hurdle, making the new habit feel more natural. In conclusion, habit stacking is a powerful and practical strategy for habit formation. By linking new behaviors to existing habits, you create reliable cues that prompt action, reduce friction, and increase the likelihood of consistency. This method leverages the brain's natural pattern-seeking tendencies and the automaticity of existing habits to build new routines effortlessly. James Clear's habit stacking technique offers a simple yet highly effective framework that anyone can use to build positive habits, create lasting change, and improve their daily lives by turning small, intentional sequences of behavior into powerful habits.